This episode, we're discussing my single I released a couple months back called Blue and Green. This song had a very unique, inspirational moment behind it. I think not only to me, but I think to a lot of people at this point. My fiance and I, about a year and a half ago, we had tried our first sensory deprivation float appointment. We went to a place called Halcyon Floats in Philadelphia. Shout out to them. They really provided the experience, but also the inspiration in a lot of ways. I'd heard about sensory deprivation from a friend. He was doing it pretty frequently at this same facility at the time. And I had also heard about it from Joe Rogan on his podcast. He plugs it very frequently for its healing properties. And he actually has one of these sensory deprivation chambers in his home. So pretty cool thing to have around the house, which I'll get into why it's so cool, of course. But we had tried it. We decided to book the appointment. I ran it by my fiance. We went and did it together in 2 separate rooms. And some of the options for this experience are within a chamber, like Joe Rogan has at his house, but you can also do it in kind of more like a room atmosphere, which is maybe the lesser of the 2 options, but it was still a very profound experience. It was the only time we had done this, but we arrived at Halcyon Floats and they ask you to enter this room, take a shower before you get into the water. And what it is pretty much is a very small room. You can think of it as like maybe the size of a typical bathroom. And on the floor of said room is about 10 inches of water, high that is, and it's enriched with magnesium. So the idea is that your ears are underwater. You can't hear anything. There's an option to turn music on, but I declined that. I really wanted the experience of depriving myself of all 5 senses. Your ears are underwater. The water is very warm and the room temperature is very warm. So eventually whatever is above water gets kind of desensitized. And then also, your skin below submerged gets a little numb to the whole atmosphere as well. And the magnesium in the water allows you to hit this numb point in the session, as it kind of helps. Think of it as the way salt acts in the ocean, allows you to float on top of the water. You're not eating anything, of course, during the whole session, so that's not engaged. And then the kind of smell of the whole scenario, it is also neutral smelling in I'd say every sense. So they really try to develop an atmosphere where all your senses are turned off and all the noise in terms of all 5 senses, not just hearing, is kind of blocked out from your mind, from your body, from your spirit in a lot of ways too, which I'll get into. But you lay down, and once you kind of get comfortable, and this is what I go over in the first verse of the song, Blue and Green, you lie naked in the darkness of space. That's what it feels like. You are completely naked and you're in this water, but eventually you tune out of the fact that it's water you're submerged in. You feel like you're just floating kind of in space and time. Not even with a sense of time, though. Think of outer space. That's almost how I felt. That's almost how it felt and looked in my head. Also because it's that quiet. And again, once you get used to this adjustment period of laying in the water and getting comfortable, stop moving around, bouncing off the walls and things like that, you succumb to this warm darkness, this warm blackness, and it's almost an embrace. And there's a very different experience from anything that we're used to, because our minds are always engaged, whether consciously or not, out there in the world, with all the distractions, with all the things to kind of pursue us and engage us, and vice versa. And then after those lyrics in the first verse, I kind of really want to pay homage to the profound nature of this experience with the chorus, but also I'll get into how it foreshadows some of the visions I had. I wasn't under the influence, and my fiance wasn't either, of any substances, although people do use substances to enhance the experience. We just decided not to. We really wanted to be pure and just the experience itself, to see how transformative it was. People had raved about it, so we really wanted to see what the hype was about. And despite that, I lay down and I'm starting to see visions. I see my mind's eye or how I choose to interpret that moment. Maybe I'd been informed by some of my reading of things like transcendentalism in college, but I interpreted it. It was a singular eye. It wasn't a face or a silhouetted face or anything like that. And the eye was kind of pouring forth some not only fluid looking substance but also colors, and these colors were blue and green. It's kind of when you close your eyes and you don't necessarily see total blackness, you see kind of shades of whatever is pouring in through that skin. And again, it is very dark in here, which is confusing because you see those shades because of some of the light occasionally. But in this room, it was pretty pitch black. So I can't help but interpret this experience as my mind conjuring the images with what little color spectrum was left behind my eyelids, if that makes sense. Anyway, the colors were blue and green, and along with blackness, kind of blue and green on a canvas of black. And I really want to lay that out as best I can, because if any song needs this couch confession and explanation, it's Blue and Green, from the album I'm about to release next month. Because it's just so abstract, and the experience, it was very individual. You almost have to try a sensory deprivation float for yourself to seek out a similar experience, or at least have a notion of what I'm talking about. So again, moving from that first chorus in the song, I'm kind of foreshadowing, this is a really profound experience, and here's some of the things I saw. Again, my mind's eye pours forth this series of images, and most of them were my fiance and I, our faces, us kind of interlocked, intertwined. One that was very striking, and I'll never forget it, was kind of like her face here, my face here on a stagger. But mine was upside down, hers was right side up. And at one point, our features started shifting and moving around, almost as if we had become like a Picasso abstract art painting. And the Picasso art I'm speaking of at the point when he was drawing faces in unique ways, kind of distorted imagery. That's what we turned into, and it was very interesting to see before my eyes, and almost subconsciously I wasn't controlling it. I wasn't informed of any of the Picasso art right prior to this experience, so I really can't blame it on anything like that. Maybe just my subconscious developing this in my mind. That's the only thing I could come up with and interpret. It was really just a cool experience that was almost not of my own making, and that part was really, really unique. Going into the second verse of the song, I touch on how my face, like I said, was upside down. Hers was right side up. I opened my mind's eye. I drank from its cup. She was there, and that was enough. It was a blue and green kaleidoscope of love. Again, the images were very unique, but they were my fiance and I. She was the last person I saw prior to entering the flotation chamber. And I can't help but call it an ode, an homage to love. I go into this totally new experience. I could have seen anything in the world, and I see the woman I love. Really interesting perspective. And kind of a lesson to myself. I shut everything out in the world, everything that could distract any of my five senses, and I see her. Really an amazing thing now that I think about it. I'm just having a lot of revelations, in this moment, even thinking about that past experience. But yeah, it was a blue and green kaleidoscope of love. It was colors. It was my fiance. It was me realizing how important love is when you get rid of all the other stuff. And going into the bridge of the song, I, again, focus in on this Picasso abstract art aspect of what our faces looked like, of the way we were kind of playing off each other in these visions. And eventually the experience had to end. I wanted our faces right side up again. I wanted, our features back to the way they're supposed to be. And there's this interesting moment too in the experience that I lay out in the bridge of the song. Prior to it ending, or as it was ending, I say that a light blinded me, a red beam pierced the dark. There was a light on the ceiling of the room that was right above my face, and that's how they end the session. They turn this light on, and I still have my eyes closed. So what I see is kind of this blinding redness that is the light, shining through my eyelids. But again, another color play from taking me away from my non-distracted and totally secluded black canvas with blue and green color play throughout, the course of an hour. That went really quick, by the way. It's one of those situations where like time flies when you're having fun. It felt like that. But yeah, as they turned that light on, the red beam pierced the dark. It blinded me, and it was almost being like born again. You come out changed. It is a pretty transformative experience. It has you thinking about almost things that were like tucked away into your subconscious, and you come out, yeah, feeling like a new person almost in some subtle ways. The red light came on, you get up and it's back to reality. Essentially, you remember where you are and what you're actually doing, as opposed to this dreamlike state, which, again, a nod to that. It can't last forever, of course. But as I was developing the song itself sonically, there weren't a lot of musicians or bands that were an influence in the making of the song. The one I'll say that influenced some of the subtleties, on the transitions into the chorus, there's a vocal sample that was inspired by the 1975 song Somebody Else. They used kind of a distorted version of a vocal sample. I thought it was a guitar. My engineer said, no, that's a vocal. I have a bunch of those. We can shop some of those. And we found one. We decided to use a little more clean version of that as a kind of swell into the second and third chorus. And I love how that turned out. As far as the instrumentation, I decided to use at the foundation. I love using piano. I'm a piano player first and foremost, but at the foundation I decided to use the electric piano. I love that velvety feel it has, but still being true to what a piano sounds like. And that kind of built a lot of the atmosphere in the song. I really wanted a serene feel to just mimic and shadow and portray this beautiful, tranquil mode that you enter while depriving yourself of all five senses in these chambers. So the electric piano, I developed a chord progression that was kind of similar to the Drinking Alone chord progression. Shh, don't tell anybody. Around that, I decided to use some kind of chill digital drums as opposed to what I thought would sound more harsh in like a truer rock drum kit. So we went with digital drums that I think were more true to what I was trying to do here. I had a big bass sound in there that was, as far as dynamics, kind of tucked in there. I just wanted to add like an atmosphere and a vibrations to really depict the way you're alone with your own vibrations. You're not distracted by the vibes of the outside world in these flotation chambers. And along with that kind of concoction of sounds, at the bridge in the song, I build with that bass sound, kind of a boom, 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 boom sound. I wanted to build to something, and what that was that end of the song when the red beam pierced the dark. On the chorus, though, I used an acoustic piano sound, actually, which I love how that added some disparity a little bit, because it added to the profound feel I was trying to portray from this experience. And the chord progression I decided to use, my engineer gave me a little nod. He said it sounded like Michael Jackson's song, which I later discovered was actually Human Nature. It was a similar kind of suspended chords and regular triad chord combination, but it ended up being a cool accident, actually. Then on the guitar solo of the song, I was really just messing around, decided on a very simple melody, and also added a nice feel to the very serene atmosphere. And then this song wraps up with the chorus again, to really pay homage to how profound this experience was. And I hope it influences others to try a sensory deprivation float. But yeah, the song, I also wanted to have some healing properties. And if it does either of those things, then my job was successful. But yeah. Until next time, guys, thank you for tuning in again, and we'll see you again on the Couch Confessions.